The war was over, but the scars it left behind were everywhere. Lieutenant Marcus Drake trudged through the ruins of a once majestic alien city on Gyraxis 7, his boots crunching against broken glass and twisted metal. Smoke still hung heavy in the air, mingling with the faint hum of collapsing structures around him. The Galactic War had been brutal, a clash between humanity and an alliance of alien races that stretched across star systems. Humanity had won, but victory felt hollow to Marcus. Too many lives lost, too much destruction wrought. He adjusted the strap of his rifle on his shoulder, his gaze scanning the desolate landscape. Most soldiers had already claimed their spoils: advanced technology, rare minerals, or artifacts from fallen enemies, as part of the post-war reparations agreement. Marcus hadn't bothered. He wasn't interested in trophies. All he wanted was to go home, wherever that even was anymore. But orders were orders, and his commanding officer had sent him here to oversee the final sweep of this sector. As he moved deeper into the wreckage, something caught his eye: a faint glimmer beneath a pile of debris. Curious, Marcus knelt and brushed away shards of shattered stone. Beneath the rubble lay a sleek, metallic pod, its surface smooth and unblemished despite the devastation surrounding it. A soft hum emanated from within, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. Intrigued, Marcus pressed his palm against the panel on its side. With a hiss, the pod began to open. Inside, suspended in a glowing gel-like substance, was a figure unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. She was humanoid, yet unmistakably alien. Her skin shimmered with an opalescent glow, shifting colors as if alive. Long, delicate limbs framed her lithe body, and her face was serene, almost ethereal. Dark hair cascaded around her shoulders, floating gently in the viscous fluid. For a moment, Marcus forgot to breathe. The gel drained away, and the woman stirred, her eyes fluttering open. They were large and luminous, filled with intelligence, and perhaps a hint of sorrow. She blinked slowly, taking in her surroundings before turning her gaze to Marcus. There was no fear in her expression, only quiet observation. It unnerved him more than any hostile stare ever could. "Who are you?" Marcus asked hesitantly, breaking the silence. She didn't respond, merely watching him with those piercing eyes. He glanced at the markings etched onto the pod's exterior, identifying it as property of the Arindi, a species known for their beauty, grace, and rumored psychic abilities. More importantly, they were bred for servitude, valued as slaves by the very coalition humanity had defeated. Marcus clenched his jaw, guilt gnawing at him. This woman, this asterisk being asterisk, wasn't just some object to be claimed. Yet, standing there amidst the ruins, he knew he couldn't leave her behind. If he did, someone else would find her, someone less scrupulous. Swallowing his unease, Marcus extended a hand toward her. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said firmly, though whether he was trying to reassure her or himself, he wasn't sure. "Come with me." For a long moment, she simply stared at his outstretched hand. Then, with deliberate slowness, she reached out and placed her slender fingers in his grasp. The contact sent a strange warmth coursing through him, leaving him unsettled but resolute. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: his life would never be the same again. The hum of the engines filled the small starship as Marcus guided Asterisk, the Iron Resolve Asterisk, through the vast emptiness of space. Lurael, the mysterious Irindi woman, sat quietly in the corner of the cramped cabin, her glowing eyes fixed on the viewport. Stars streaked past like scattered diamonds, but she didn't seem to notice them. Instead, her gaze held a faraway look, as if she were staring into another world entirely. Marcus glanced at her from the pilot's seat, his brow furrowed. Since bringing her aboard, she hadn't spoken a single word. No protests, no questions, nothing. He had tried engaging her in conversation during their first few hours together, asking about her name, her origins, anything that might break the silence. But all he got in return were those piercing stares, which made him feel both guilty and uneasy. It was as though she were silently judging him, weighing his worth. Still, there was something about her presence that intrigued him. She moved with an effortless grace, her every action deliberate and precise. When they stopped briefly at a nearby asteroid field to refuel, she surprised him by tidying up the cluttered cockpit without being asked. Tools were neatly arranged, stray wires coiled, and even the grimy floor panels wiped clean. Marcus watched her work, unsure whether to thank her or insist she stop. In the end, he said nothing, letting her finish. By the third day, Marcus realized she wasn't just observing him. She was studying him. Every time he adjusted the ship's controls, checked the navigation system, or muttered under his breath about fuel shortages, her eyes followed his movements intently. At first, it unnerved him, but over time, he began to see it differently. Maybe she wasn't judging him after all. Maybe she was simply trying to understand. One evening, as Marcus prepared a simple meal of rehydrated rations, Lirael appeared beside him, holding two mismatched cups. Without a word, she set them down on the table and began pouring water from a canteen. Marcus hesitated before sitting across from her, watching as she slid one cup toward him. For the first time since they'd met, she offered him a faint smile, a small curve of her lips that transformed her entire face. "Thank you," Marcus said softly, unsure if she understood. To his surprise, she nodded slightly, her shimmering skin catching the dim light of the cabin. Curiosity gnawed at him. That night, while Lirael rested in the spare quarters, Marcus accessed the ship's database and began researching the Arindi. What he found fascinated him. The Arindi were once a proud people, revered for their wisdom and rumored ability to manipulate energy fields. Centuries of enslavement had stripped them of much of their culture, reducing them to commodities traded among the galaxy's elite. Their language, rituals, and history had faded into obscurity, leaving only fragments behind. As Marcus read, guilt settled heavily in his chest. How many others like Lirael had been torn from their homes, forced into servitude, and forgotten? And here he was, claiming ownership of her because circumstances left him no other choice. The thought sickened him. When he finally closed the terminal, Lirael was standing in the doorway, her arms crossed loosely over her chest. She tilted her head, studying him as if sensing the turmoil within him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, she raised a hand and pointed to the screen. "You want to know more?" Marcus asked, gesturing to the data still visible on the monitor. She nodded, her expression unreadable. For the first time since finding her, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this silence between them wasn't a barrier. It was a bridge waiting to be built. The bustling trade hub of Nova Seren was a chaotic blend of sights, sounds, and smells. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its sprawling station, their crews spilling out into crowded markets filled with merchants shouting over one another to sell their wares. Marcus stepped off Asterisk, the Iron Resolve Asterisk, with Lirael close behind him, her presence drawing curious, and sometimes hostile, stares. He had draped a simple cloak over her shoulders to conceal her distinctive appearance, but it didn't stop people from whispering as they passed. "Stay close," Marcus muttered under his breath, gripping the strap of his satchel tighter. Inside were salvaged components from Gyraxis 7, remnants of alien technology he hoped to sell for credits. They needed supplies, fuel, food, and repairs, but the station's reputation for danger kept him on edge. This wasn't just any trading post. It was a haven for mercenaries, smugglers, and bounty hunters. As they navigated through the throng of aliens and humans, a group of rough-looking men blocked their path. One of them, a burly human with a scar running down his cheek, sneered at Lirael. Well, what do we have here? Looks like someone's got themselves an Arindi pet." Marcus stiffened, stepping between them. "She's not for sale." The man chuckled, glancing at his companions. "Relax, soldier. We're not here to buy, just collecting strays." His tone turned cold. Word is, there's a price on escaped slaves around these parts. Hand her over, and maybe we'll let you walk away." Lurael's hand brushed against Marcus's arm, her touch light yet firm. Her eyes flickered toward the mercenaries, calm but alert. Marcus clenched his jaw, knowing full well that handing her over wasn't an option, not after everything they'd been through together. But outnumbered and unarmed, fighting seemed like a losing battle. Before Marcus could respond, the air around them shifted. A low hum filled the space, growing louder by the second. The mercenaries exchanged confused glances until one of them shouted, "What the hell?" Suddenly, the weapons in their hands sparked and sputtered, their circuits frying instantly. Sparks flew as the men stumbled back, panic spreading across their faces. Marcus turned to see Lurael standing tall, her hands raised slightly, energy crackling faintly around her fingertips. Her expression remained serene, almost detached, as if this display of power came naturally to her. The mercenaries hesitated only for a moment before bolting, shoving past bystanders in their haste to escape. Silence fell over the area as onlookers stared in awe or fear at what had just transpired. Marcus exhaled sharply, turning to Lurael. What was that? Her gaze met his, and for the first time since they'd met, she spoke. Her voice was soft, but carried a weight that silenced the chaos around them. "I am not a slave," she said simply, lowering her hands. "And I will not be taken." Marcus blinked, stunned not just by her words, but by the authority in her tone. She had hidden this side of herself all along, her strength, her defiance. Yet now, seeing it unveiled, he couldn't help but feel a mix of admiration and unease. Who was she, really? And how much more did she keep hidden beneath that quiet exterior? They returned to the ship without further incident, but the encounter lingered in Marcus's mind. That night, as they sat in the dimly lit cabin, he finally worked up the courage to ask, "Why didn't you tell me you could do that?" Lurael looked at him, her luminous eyes reflecting the faint glow of the control panel. "You never asked," she replied quietly. Then, after a pause, he added, "Not everyone deserves to know." Her words struck a chord within him. For so long, he had viewed her as someone fragile, someone who needed protection. But now, he realized she was far stronger than he'd given her credit for, and perhaps in some ways, she had been protecting him too. The days following their narrow escape from Nova Seren were tense. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every time the Iron Resolve passed near another ship, his fingers instinctively hovered over the controls, ready to jump into hyperspace at a moment's notice. Lurael, too, seemed on edge, her usual calm demeanor replaced by an almost constant vigilance. She spent hours staring out the viewport, her glowing eyes scanning the void for any sign of danger. "What are they after?" Marcus asked one evening as they sat in a cramped cockpit. His voice was low, but the frustration in it was clear. "Those mercenaries weren't random. They knew who you were." Lurael turned to him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, she didn't respond. Then, with careful deliberation, she said, "They seek what lies within me." Marcus frowned. "What does that mean?" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands. When she finally spoke, her words came slowly, as if each one carried great weight. "My people, we are more than slaves. Long ago, before the chains, we were keepers of secrets, guardians of ancient knowledge. Our blood holds keys to forgotten technologies, relics left behind by those who came before us." Marcus leaned forward, his curiosity outweighing his confusion. "What kind of technologies?" "Powerful ones," Lurael replied softly. "Weapons, shields, machines capable of reshaping worlds. But also dangers. Not all who wield such power do so wisely." Her eyes met his, sharp and piercing. "That is why my kind was hunted, enslaved. We became tools, our heritage stripped away piece by piece. Yet some remember. Some still covet what remains." A chill ran down Marcus's spine. He had heard rumors of ancient alien artifacts scattered across the galaxy, devices so advanced they defied comprehension. If Lirael truly carried the key to unlocking them, then the stakes were far higher than he'd imagined. They weren't just running from mercenaries. They were fleeing forces willing to kill for her genetic code. Before he could press further, the ship's proximity alarm blared, startling them both. On the monitor, 3 unidentified vessels appeared, closing in fast. Pirates, or worse. "They found us," Marcus muttered, gripping the controls. "Hold on." He activated the thrusters, sending the ship hurtling through space as laser fire streaked past them. The attackers were relentless, their ships weaving in formation to cut off escape routes. Marcus cursed under his breath, dodging blasts while plotting a course toward the nearest asteroid field. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was better than nothing. As they entered the rocky maze, Lirael stood beside him, her hands raised once more. Energy crackled around her fingertips, faint at first, but growing stronger. "Let me help," she said firmly. "No," Marcus snapped, glancing at her. "You've done enough already. Stay back." But she ignored him, stepping closer to the console. With a swift motion, she placed her palms on the control panel. The ship shuddered as bursts of energy surged outward, creating a protective barrier that deflected incoming fire. The pursuing ships faltered, caught off guard by the sudden defense. Marcus stared at her, torn between gratitude and fear. How much more was she capable of? And how long could they keep running before someone stronger, smarter, or more ruthless caught up to them? For now, though, survival was all that mattered. The asteroid field had bought them time, but Marcus knew it wouldn't last. The pursuing ships were relentless, their pilots skilled enough to navigate the treacherous rocks while keeping the iron resolve asterisk in their sights. Every jolt of the ship sent a fresh wave of tension through Marcus's body, his knuckles white as he gripped the controls. Lirael remained beside him, her energy barrier holding steady, but even she couldn't maintain it forever. "We need help," Marcus muttered, scanning the nav console for options. His eyes landed on a distant moon orbiting a gas giant, a remote, uncharted location that might offer temporary refuge. It wasn't much of a plan, but desperation left little room for strategy. As they approached the moon's surface, Marcus spotted something unusual. Faint lights flickering in the distance. Settlements weren't uncommon on moons like this, but these didn't look like mining outposts or trading stations. They were too scattered, too hidden. Against his better judgment, Marcus steered the ship toward the nearest cluster of lights. When they landed, Marcus stepped out cautiously, blaster in hand, with Lirael close behind him. The air was thin but breathable, and the landscape was barren, except for the ruins of an ancient structure partially buried in the dirt. Before they could investigate further, voices echoed from the shadows. "Who dares trespass here?" called a deep, gravelly voice. From the darkness emerged a group of figures, aliens clad in patched-up armor and armed with makeshift weapons. Their leader, a tall Irindi male with scared skin and piercing golden eyes, stepped forward. His presence commanded respect, though his expression was wary. "State your purpose." Marcus raised his hand slightly, showing he meant no harm. "We're looking for shelter. We're being hunted." The leader studied them, his gaze lingering on Lirael. Recognition flashed across his face. "Another of our kind," he said softly, lowering his weapon. "Tell me, human, why do you bring her here?" Marcus hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. But Lirael stepped forward, speaking in a language Marcus didn't understand. The words flowed smoothly, melodic yet firm. The leader listened intently, his expression shifting from suspicion to something resembling respect. "She tells us you saved her life," he said after a moment, switching back to Galactic Standard, "and that you fight alongside her now. Few humans would risk themselves for one of us." He extended a hand. "I am Kalos, leader of the Free Irindi. You may stay, for now." Over the next few days, Marcus learned more about the Free Irindi, a group of escaped slaves determined to reclaim their heritage. They lived in hiding, protecting fragments of their culture and fighting against those who sought to exploit their people. Kalos explained that Lirael's bloodline was especially significant. Her ancestors had been among the last guardians of the ancient keys, the genetic codes tied to the powerful relics Marcus had heard about. But trust came at a cost. To prove his loyalty, Marcus had to undergo trials designed to test his resolve and courage. From combat simulations to survival challenges, each task pushed him to his limits. Through it all, Lirael stood by silently, her eyes watching every move he made. When he finally completed the final trial, a grueling climb up a jagged cliff under enemy fire, Kalos nodded approvingly. "You've earned our respect, human," Kalos said. "But know this. Protecting her means risking everything. Are you prepared for that?" Marcus glanced at Lirael, who returned his gaze with quiet determination. For the first time, he realized the answer wasn't just about survival. It was about doing what was right. "Yes," he said firmly. "I am." With the Free Irindi's support, Marcus and Lirael prepared for the battles ahead. But as alliances formed, so did new enemies. And the galaxy's deadliest hunters were closing in. The moon's desolate landscape became a hive of activity as the Free Irindi prepared for war. Kalos and his warriors worked tirelessly, fortifying their hidden base with scavenged weapons and energy shields. Marcus trained alongside them, learning to wield alien tech and adapting to their guerrilla tactics. Though he was an outsider, the respect he'd earned through the trials solidified his place among them. Still, every moment spent preparing reminded him of the stakes. Failure meant not just death, but the loss of everything Lirael represented. Lirael herself remained distant during these preparations, retreating to the ruins near the camp. Marcus found her there one evening, standing amidst crumbling pillars etched with ancient symbols. Her hands hovered over the carvings, tracing faint lines that glowed faintly under her touch. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked softly, approaching cautiously. "These are memories," she replied without looking at him. "Of my people, our legacy. I am trying to remember, to understand what I must do." Marcus frowned. "And what is that?" She turned to face him, her luminous eyes filled with resolve. "To awaken what has been lost. To use the key within me, not for power, but to protect those who cannot fight for themselves." Before Marcus could respond, alarms blared across the camp. A scout raced toward them, breathless. "They're here. Corporate ships. They've found us." Chaos erupted as the enemy fleet descended upon the moon. Dozens of sleek, heavily armed vessels unleashed a barrage of fire, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Kalos barked orders, rallying his fighters into position. Energy shields flared to life around the base, absorbing the initial assault, but it was clear they were outnumbered and outgunned. Marcus grabbed Lirael's arm. "You need to stay back. You're too important." "No," she interrupted, pulling away. "This is my fight as much as yours. Trust me." Reluctantly, Marcus nodded, following her to the heart of the battle. Together, they joined Kalos and his warriors, holding the line against waves of mercenaries pouring from dropships. The fight was brutal and chaotic, the air thick with smoke and screams. Marcus fired his weapon again and again, each shot fueled by adrenaline and determination. But the turning point came when the enemy deployed a massive walker, a towering machine bristling with cannons. Its sheer size dwarfed everything else on the battlefield, its weapons tearing through defenses like paper. Panic spread among the Free Irindi as the walker advanced, unstoppable. Lirael stepped forward, her body glowing with an otherworldly light. She raised her arms, and the ground beneath her trembled. Ancient runes etched into the ruins began to shine in unison with her energy, pulsing brighter with every passing second. "Lirael, stop!" Marcus shouted, fear gripping his chest. "You'll kill yourself." "I have no choice," she said calmly, her voice carrying over the din of battle. "This is why I was born." With a deafening roar, Energy surged outward from Luriel, channeling through the ruins and into the sky. A blinding pulse erupted, engulfing the walker and the surrounding enemy forces. When the light faded, the walker lay in ruins, its systems fried, and the surviving mercenaries fled in disarray. Luriel collapsed to her knees, her glow fading. Marcus rushed to her side, cradling her in his arms. Her breathing was shallow, but she managed a weak smile. "We did it," she whispered. Marcus clenched his jaw, holding back tears. Victory had come at a cost, but it wasn't over yet. The aftermath of the battle was a somber affair. The free Irindi tended to their wounded and mourned their fallen, their voices low with grief, but also tinged with hope. The corporate syndicate's forces had been driven back, their fleet retreating into the void, leaving behind only smoldering wreckage and scattered debris. For now, the moon was safe, but Marcus knew it was only a temporary reprieve. The galaxy was vast, and those who sought to exploit the Irindi's secrets would not stop so easily. Luriel lay in a makeshift medical bay, her body frail but alive. The energy surge that had saved them had taken a heavy toll on her, leaving her weak and unresponsive for days. Marcus rarely left her side, his guilt gnawing at him like an open wound. He replayed the moment in his mind over and over, the way she had stepped forward without hesitation, sacrificing herself for their cause. It wasn't just bravery, it was selflessness beyond anything he'd ever witnessed. When Luriel finally opened her eyes, Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. Her gaze met his, softer now, as if the weight of centuries had lifted from her shoulders. "You stayed," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "Where else would I go?" Marcus replied, forcing a smile. "You're stuck with me." She managed a faint laugh, though it turned into a cough. "I told you, this was my fight, and it still is." Kalos entered the room moments later, his expression grim but resolute. "The enemy will regroup," he said. "We've bought time, but we cannot stay here forever." Marcus nodded. "Then what's the plan?" Kalos looked at Luriel, then back at Marcus. "We rebuild, not just our people, but our culture. The relics hold great power, yes, but they also carry wisdom. With Luriel's bloodline guiding us, we can unlock their true purpose: to heal, to unite, not to destroy." For the first time, Marcus saw a flicker of peace in Luriel's eyes. She reached out, placing her hand on his. "Will you help us?" It wasn't just a question, it was an invitation. Marcus thought about everything they'd been through together. The battles, the revelations, the sacrifices. He realized he couldn't walk away. Not now, not after seeing the strength and resilience of the Irindi. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for justice, for redemption. "I'm with you," he said firmly, "until the end." In the weeks that followed, Marcus and Luriel worked alongside the free Irindi to restore fragments of their lost heritage. Ancient texts were translated, rituals revived, and stories passed down through generations shared once more. Luriel became a symbol of hope, not because of her powers, but because of her unwavering belief in a better future. Together, Marcus and Luriel traveled across the stars, seeking allies and spreading awareness of the injustices faced by enslaved species. Their journey was far from easy, but it was filled with purpose. No longer master and slave, they stood as equals, partners bound by trust and shared ideals. One evening, as they stood on a lush alien world bathed in golden sunlight, Marcus turned to Luriel. "Do you think we can really change things? The whole galaxy, I mean." She smiled, her opalescent skin shimmering in the light. "We already have. One step at a time." As they gazed at the horizon, the scars of war still lingered, but so did the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, forging a new path among the stars.